Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Deal. I'm Jason Kelly alongside my partner, Alex Rodriguez. All right, Alex, we're going to get to a really interesting interview in just a second with Sportradar founder and CEO Carsten Koerl. So Sportradar, it's a huge information provider in the world of sports betting. They work with all the major sports leagues and betting platforms to make data analytics much more accessible. But before we get to that, I guess you want to know why I'm in yet another nameless, faceless hotel room. I'm actually in Dallas, and you're not going to believe who I got to sit down with. I'm so excited for you to hear this interview when it comes out in a couple weeks. The Hunt brothers,
Wow.
Clark Hunt, Dan Hunt, arguably one of the most influential families in the history of American sports. I think you would agree.
Not American sports, global sports. I mean, they are the North Star. I mean, they really are admired and respected by all.
Yeah, so it was fascinating because what we realized was this was the founding family, really one of the founding families of the NFL. And by the way, the MLS too. I mean, this was, American soccer didn't really exist until they and your friends, the Crafts, really got involved in it, have really propelled it forward. Now, soccer is headed for this huge moment in the United States in 2026. Between Kansas City and Dallas alone, they're going to host 16 games. 9 of them are going to be here in Dallas at AT&T Stadium is obviously going to be the centerpiece of all that. The other amazing thing that we talk about in this interview, which will come as no surprise to you, Taylor Swift.
Oh, wow.
Taylor Swift had a tremendous impact on the Kansas City Chiefs franchise. Yes, winning back-to-back Super Bowls was big, but really the biggest thing that happened in terms of, we talk about the zeitgeist all the time, was Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce starting to date. And I'd tell you, Clark Hunt and Dan Hunt both told incredible stories about the impact that was going to have. So excited for you to hear about that. We've got a story that we're going to run on the Bloomberg. We recorded a TV interview as well. My partner in that case was Julie Fine, the Texas Bureau Chief. So we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up there.
Jace, let me add one thing to that, because first of all, I'm so excited to see this interview. I've admired the Hunts for a very, very long time. What they keep doing over the last many decades is just keep setting the bar higher and higher. And I got one quick story. I recently was at a convention where Roger Goodell spoke. And on that day, the baseball schedule had come out in Major League Baseball for 2025. Okay. And ironically, they asked him, how do you think about the network? How do you think about when to position games for better ratings? And he said, we wait to the very last minute. And this was interesting because it ties into the Hunt family and Kansas City Chiefs. They said Kansas City did huge numbers. Obviously, they're a great team, Mahomes, Kelce, but Taylor Swift, her name come up again. And one of the things they said is they're looking at her global schedule to see when they can schedule the NFL games to make sure that she is there. And I'm just like, this is incredible. The NFL waits for her global concert to go out so they can set their games. So hopefully she's there and the numbers can go up.
That's unbelievable. I mean, and to that point, the audience expansion that she brought to the Chiefs and to the league, I mean, they're figuring out the best ways to measure it. But anecdotally, one of the things Clark Hunt told us was he just had people coming up to him saying, my 10 or 12-year-old daughter wants me to tell her every single time the Kansas City Chiefs are on TV because she's going to watch.
That is amazing.
And that's it. It's a literal game changer. When we think about game changers, watch what I'm going to do here. Sports betting has obviously radically changed the landscape. There's a Business Week cover story that is out now, and it is all about the world of sports betting. I got the opportunity to head down to South Florida. You were away, so we couldn't hang out. And I was up the road in Fort Lauderdale. I met up with several current and former Dolphins who talked about, from the players' perspective, what this huge increase in legalized betting has meant for them, both as players and also, I think importantly, and something you can understand far better than I, what it means to be the product that's being bet on and sort of the implications of all of that. Obviously, fantasy has been a huge driver. of both interest and revenue. So it is a world that I'm not sure any of us could have imagined when we were kids, because betting was not legal. And now it is, and it is a booming business. So Carsten Koerl is a fascinating guy. I mean, this is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. And one of the things I loved about this interview that we're about to play is you guys were sort of like swapping notes on what does it take to, really have that right stuff, right?
First of all, the way he talks about some of his investors, I mean, he has a wild story or two about Michael Jordan, Mark Cuban, Ted Leonsis, and it's wild how these deals came together. And he's going to share something about the day they went IPO. He takes us behind the scenes with Michael Jordan, and I'm not going to spoil it. No spoiler alerts here. And just the whole space. I mean, you got to understand, my first love, Jason, was baseball, right? And when you talked about gambling, anything with the word gambling, gaming around baseball or sports, it was a pariah. It's amazing, the paradigm shift, the radical change, where now we're getting leagues involved, we're getting players involved, we're getting owners involved. It's just fascinating, and I think he does a beautiful job of explaining a lot of it.
All right, coming up next on The Deal, our interview with Carsten Koerl, the founder and CEO of Sportradar. All right, so now we're going to bring in Carsten Koerl. He's the CEO and the founder of Sportradar. Carsten, we are so happy to have you here to talk to us all about data, sports betting. It's something that the numbers, this is what we love on this show. Alex and I talk about it all the time. I want to start by asking you, like, when you get to meet somebody at a cocktail party or a dinner party and they say, what do you do? What does Sportradar do? What do you say?
Well, we are collecting sport information. We are processing it, aggregating it. We are selling it to 1,000 media clients and 800 sports betting operators in 111 countries at the moment. We have offices in 34 of those countries. And we have around about 4,500 employees sitting in those offices.
Wow. So where does that idea come from? I believe before Sportradar, you started off in the sports betting world in the 90s with a company called bwin. Then you sold that company and started Sportradar back in the early 2000s. So walk us through what happened.
Look, it's a long story. But if I'm looking back, so it was a long night in Switzerland, in a small city. And I was sitting with a friend, and I think at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we came to the conclusion, I love sport, I love technology. So what can I do to really bring those two things together? And the answer was, let's develop a platform for sports betting in the internet. Now, that was 1996. And whenever I'm telling the story, I'm feeling damn old. But this is something where that took us 3 years. I programmed that platform together with the colleagues. And then I wanted to sell it and went to England to the big bookmakers, Ladbrokes, Hills, Chorus, you name it. And said, I have a fantastic thing. It's a sports betting platform which is doing sports betting over the internet. And the CEO said to me, well, you sound very passionate about this and it looks pretty cool. But you know what? We are not so sure if the internet is a sustainable channel. And then I said, okay, that's a trouble. So I'm going to take this. I believe in it. I operate this sports betting platform myself. I went to Austria, took a license. That was one of the few countries which can do it. To cut a long story short, we IPO'd the business. It was the most successful IPO, I think, in the Austrian market still today. We have been oversigned close to 200 times, but it's a small market there.
Right.
And I, as a very young entrepreneur, got a lot of money, but I lost the control of my business. And losing the control of the business and having people telling you what you should do is difficult for an entrepreneur. So I decided to do something new. And I founded Sportradar. So I knew that there was a demand on data. I knew that this is international. It's not so easy to have team names in 50 different languages, including Hindi and Mandarin and whatsoever, in a correct spelling. Even these basic things, there was a need for it. And there was a need how you transmit this and how you're making a market transparent by somehow crawling that information together and comparing it. That was the origin of Sportradar. We started with 4 clients. I invested, I think, 150,000 euros at this time. Since then, I never invested. And now the business is worth, a bit more than 3 billion. And I still the major shareholder and the biggest shareholder in there. So that is the story in a nutshell.
Amazing, amazing, and congrats. I mean, it sounds like an amazing journey. I guess my question is, how quickly did you identify what the TAM, the addressable market is on a business like this?
As an entrepreneur, you love what you're doing. I love sport and I love technology. At this time, very honestly, I was not interested in whatever TAM. I simply had a passion to say, wow, what I can do is I can work with the sport which I love, and I can work in a fast-growing global market where I know it's a market with the sharpest brains on the planet because it's a regulated industry. You need to be very quick. You need to react very quick. And it's a global competition. And that was driving me saying it's an excitement and it's a pleasure to work there. And I think in the first years, we simply progressed in this perspective. It was a startup business without looking too much on the TAMs because I financed it by myself. I didn't need any kind of investors in there. And I still recall after 4 or 5 years, we had the first management meeting on a big, big whiteboard moderated by a friend of mine. And one of my colleagues draw on that whiteboard, it was 3 meters to 4 meters high, so really big, draw a number and saying our target is 80 million revenue. That was in the year number 5, probably year 2005, 2006. Today, our revenue is more than 1.1 billion. And for the 80 million revenue target, we didn't believe that we ever get there because we have probably at this time 15 or 17 million yearly revenue from that market. That shows you we grew with this market. The industry by itself had a tremendous growth. That was accelerated, of course, by the internet and all the things which you saw then coming. Live got more and more appealing. The live coverage is much more important. That's things which I see now in the US. I see in the early days of sports betting here, it's the same kind of learning curve which I saw in Europe. So you realize that betting while the match is running is so more appealing. So it's so much more engaging. You have all these emotions. You have all those things which you see. And then you place your bet on this. So it's the thing which was driving this industry. And worldwide, I would say it's the same phenomenon around the globe. You see a constant development. Now you see more development into player information. I'm a big believer that the players are making the game. Even if some of the teams are seeing this different, the players is really where the people follow. The fans are with them. Getting more information about the players, putting betting propositions out there, using AI, using computer vision to put that in a correlation is fairly complex, but this is so engaging. And if you make a complex story simple, that's where we are heading. If you hyper-personalize this, you have all the ingredients for the future sports consumption. And we are sitting on the crossroad here, and I see sports betting more as a technology enabler for all these adjacent markets.
But I want to get back to one of the very core elements of this is, and honestly, Alex, this is very reminiscent, oddly enough, of Bloomberg, candidly, in terms of like creating a place where the data are all sort of collected. I want to ask you a very basic question, Carsten, which is, how do you get all this data together? Where is it living that you're able to collect it, and how do you do that?
Yeah, I'm sitting here in Bloomberg, and we had a time, Jason, where we called ourselves the Bloomberg of Sport to cut it short. And it's an information transmission to a highly classified and qualified audience, in our case, the sports betting operators. And on the beginning, that was crawlers. And if those crawlers are extracting information from the internet, you begin to validate this. We very quickly came to the conclusion that we're going to need to have a highly specialized sport agency to really validate the information, to be right with the information. It sounds easy, but it's not so easy. If you have a tennis tournament, you get the order of play in the morning from the organizer. And then sometimes the matches are quicker, sometimes not. Sometimes matches are starting quicker than scheduled. So you're going to need to validate this information. Nowadays, it's fast video access. It is coverage on the ground. We operate a network of 12,000 sports journalists around the globe. They're going live into the arenas, reporting with our application, and we cover the data. We do this, by the way, for the NBA. We do that for UEFA, and we are quite sophisticated on this. The better thing is you have this data production in a controlled environment, so you have fast video feeds, and that goes into one of our operation offices. We have 4 of them. Imagine them as a kind of call center for monitors on one table, and they have a fast video feed in there. And we have a situation of 4 people are operating one match or a one-to-one situation. In American sports, it's usually 1-4 because you're going on very detailed data, the pick and roll and all those kind of things. 5 years ago, that started to get into computer vision. And with computer vision, you extract the player and you extract the ball and you extract the information from the referee. It's only a question, do you have the camera angle that you can do all those things? But what it is doing is, it is more accurate than a human being, and it's faster than a human being, and it gives you so much more data points. For tennis, I know now the reaction when the ball is leaving the racket from the other side, from the other player. How quickly is the knee reacting into this direction? Is it less than 20 milliseconds? Well, the player is in a good shape physically and mentally in the match. We can aggregate this over the match, and we can use it for predictive models. So this is possible with technologies, and we don't need human beings anymore for this. A trouble still is team sports. There is much more complex to apply computer vision, but I'm pretty positive that we will see the same development like we saw it in racket sport and player sport with the team sports. And that gives a lot of additional applications.
So, Carsten, obviously you love sports, you love technology, and you're really good at raising capital. Mm-hmm. Walk us through how difficult it is or how much fun it is to go out and get a guy like Michael Jordan or Mark Cuban and others to invest into your platform. Is it more difficult than if you were going to a private family office versus a celebrity or former icon athlete?
So I think it doesn't matter. Do you go to a family office or do you go to private equity or venture capital? Or do you go to one of the ultra-rich people which are interested in that sector? The thing which really counts is, are you convincing when you're doing the pitch? Can you show that level of engagement, but the knowledge there? And can you tell a consistent story? The numbers, of course, must fit together, but you must be convincing. Now, for me, it was never really raising money. When I went into private equity, I had to go into private equity with Sportradar because I had 2 founding partners, 2 Norwegians. And, in every meeting, they said, hey, Carsten, you know how those things are going. You're going to do it. And I said, we have now 400 people, and I want you to challenge me, and I want you to help me to give us structure. Because doing the decisions only alone is quite a risk in such a growing and hyper-growth environment. And I found a partner with venture capital who had an approach which I liked, and saying we can help you with this structure and we can help you with experts from our side. It was not so much the money. The way how I do business is I try to learn very fast. I try to make smaller steps. I'm not the guy who is saying, I need 100 million, leave me alone for 2 years, and then I will tell you what I made out of it. So for me, it's more, I'm testing things. If I see that it's successful, and the measurement of success is money hits your bank account. That's the only measurement. Success is really very simple. A client is paying for a service. If that hits your bank account, it's successful. If that success is there, I'm ready to go double and triple and all in because I see I have a learning and I see there's a value. For me, was always incremental steps and is always incremental steps. It is a slower story to grow the business. You have not that big bang, but it's for me the much better thing because I have a control and I understand what I'm doing and what we are doing is needed in the market and there is a buyer. That doesn't stop innovation, but you get a feedback of saying, is there a value in, and the value is defined by a client is paying you for this.
One of the things we try to do in this podcast is really educate and share our stories that are really important as an entrepreneur. And it's not as sexy as people think it is. I think young entrepreneurs overestimate what they can do in the short term and highly underestimate what they can do in the long term. And you see here a perfect example of really long-term thinking, much like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger.
Yeah, so I guess one of the things that I'm so interested in, Carsten, is this idea of you've been able to become an official partner of just about every major league across the world. What do they see as the business opportunity here? Like, help us understand the ecosystem that you're building and sort of who has what stake in it.
It's innovation. It's brutally looking for innovation. How can I be better that I'm attractive in the global market for the digital sport fan? How can I get my product into the market that it's appealing for them? And the digital sport fan, they want a different consumption. Probably you and me, we are looking to the big screen sometimes, looking for a match, cheering, and being fully engaged during this. If I look to the audience in Korea, for example, in a Generation Z, that's minimum 7 matches which they follow parallel. And they want to have the overlay data in, and they want you to know what player is interesting and for which player they want to have some additional information. They maybe want to have predictive games, or they want to have some merchandising, and they want you to understand this. That's a topic where you need to use technology. And if I'm looking now to the NBA, they are an excellent partner for us, same like Major League Baseball. We get tracking data from the match. We have the skeleton data of every NBA match, and we have that in real time. So we could make a funny thing out of it, put the face of Alex on the body of LeBron James, and put the parameters in there, or put my face in there to personalize this. But the whole thing is going in real time, and it is then viewed in the way like, I want to view the match. This is an understanding of the sport fan, marrying it with deep sport data to drive the product of the future. And for the smaller ones, the story is more airtime. It's really building awareness. A thing like pickleball is something which is really picking up. It's played by so many people, and it's such a fun sport. And of course, we can transport this sport from the world of betting into a broader audience, and then get all the statistics behind it, the coverage and all those things, the roster that we can organize the tournaments and help them to do this. So every sport, I would say, has different characteristics. At the end, it's usage of technology and achieving the aim for the sport.
So one of the things that, comes up in any story or any conversation about sports betting is the integrity of the game. And my understanding is that you guys have a lot of people devoted to this. You have players who could be tempted by what's effectively insider trading, tipping off who's healthy, who's unhealthy, who's playing well, who's not playing well, et cetera. There's the social impact of betting. How do you think about that philosophically? How do you guys tackle those issues?
There is no sport without integrity. If you know the outcome of the match, that's killing the sport. So this is aligning us, and it is very bad for our business model, frankly speaking. If people know the outcome of a match, you don't want to bet on it. So integrity of the game is there somebody who knows the outcome of the match or has more knowledge about this? Can be a player, can be somebody bribing the player, is in most of the cases in this way. And the player has a lot of opportunities. So no-show is something of the things which is very hard to spot. In a tenth of a second, you don't do what you can do. So this is something very early when we had been probably in year number 3 to 4 of our business. We had an accident with a German referee who manipulated soccer matches. The guy was doing it in a way that in overtime, we knew there must be a 3 goals difference. He gave 3 penalties in the last 3 minutes of a 90-minute match. That was a very obvious thing to detect. And from there, we began to develop those algorithms. Now we are seeing the whole market. We are seeing all line movements, and there is always money involved behind there. With the algorithms which we have by ourselves to predict match outcomes, and if we see spread and differences, that gets into an AI exercise in a very sophisticated system. Now the system is used by the European Court of Justice. It's used by CAS, which is the sport court in Lausanne, as an evidence that there is something going on with this. We never can say it's so much money which is played here, but the thing why we do it, and it's not a profit unit for us. You went on a second topic and saying responsible gaming, super important. We work only in regulated markets. That's the only way how you can grow a business. And I think here, the state and the regulator has an obligation to protect the people. That's the highest good. So I'm going to have to protect the people for getting gaming addicted. I'm going to have to monitor those patterns, and I have to build a framework for this, and I have to monitor this. We believe we can do this very well, and we developed the system for this. So far, we haven't managed to sell the system. I'm totally sure in 2, 3, 4 years, you will see a big pickup because there is a huge need. And the third one, where I think that's needed, and that's for regulators, is taxes. The reason why sports betting is so popular around the globe is it's generated taxes. And those taxes can be used for sport, can be used for developing something in the public, which is good for the people. You're going to need to monitor this in a much better way than is done at the moment. Putting that all together, you might say that's the regulatory service framework, which in every betting environment, in one or the other way, you need to have.
Carsten, I have one quick one. I know that you mentioned the IPO in 2021 and being one of the most successful ones. Have you ever thought about taking it private again, and maybe pros and cons, private versus public?
First, for the IPO, that was one of the moments in your life. Mm-hmm. And I've been standing there short after COVID with Michael Jordan. And a short story, hopefully he's not listening to this podcast. But he said to me in the morning, he said, Carsten, today I'm your cheerleader. And I only smiled, that will be pretty funny if you're my cheerleader. And then we had to click on the buzzer, and they simulate this, of course, but you're counting down from 10 to 1. And when we had been on 3, I looked on him and saying, I'm faster than you. And he smiled at me, no chance. And of course, I went on 1 on the buzzer. I was quicker. But he is so competitive. And that's what I get from Michael. He is, I think, the most competitive person on the planet I know. And learning from him that spirit, I want to win, was and is for me a great exercise. And he is a fantastic businessman, which many people don't realize too much. But the things what he is doing is very well organized. He is very much looking to the details. He is very attentive, and he wants to provide value. He understands sport on a level I'm not able to understand it. And he understands sports betting on a level where we are competing. So I see the directions here, and he's seeing that, saying that would be a cool thing to do. That's a perfect mix to engage on a business level. Same story somehow with Mark Cuban, who is so passionate about basketball.
I love that. I mean, one quick Michael story to put a button on yours. Jason, I haven't told you this. A few months ago, I was at his golf club in Grove 23.
Me too.
And here's Michael Jordan with his business partner. And they're sitting there for like 4 hours going over all of these P&Ls, line by line by line. And I asked him, Michael, are you playing today? He goes, no, today's my business day. I got to go down the numbers. And he probably does this once a month, right? So to your point, I have the same experience. He's been a great friend and mentor of mine. So I love Jordan.
I hope you played not against him in his golf club. It's an experience, but he's also, as we both know, a very good and competitive golfer.
Yeah, and he's the fastest golfer. Him and Mark Wahlberg can play 18 holes like in an hour and a half. I mean, that's way too much stress for me. I'm not that good.
Same for me, Alex. Same for me.
Carsten, before we get too far away from I would love to know, how did you and Jordan get linked up? It's not like he's sort of like out there. You don't just like text him and be like, hey, bro, are you interested in this? Like, how does that deal come together?
It's all about networking, knowing people. In this case, there is a third person which is involved in here, and I'm very grateful for him. He has helped me on the very beginning in the US. That's Ted Leonsis. I think he owns the most of the teams, and Ted is so well connected. I told him the story, what I want to do. And he was the first saying, okay, I'm backing this. I'm investing into this. I'm very grateful for this. And I learned a lot, and I got a lot of connections from Ted. So Ted connected me with Michael. Michael played for him. So that was an easy way to go.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because Ted is coming on the pod next month.
That will be an interesting part.
I mean, Ted is a great partner, obviously, in the NBA. But I'm also going to pick a bone with him. Like, how can you not call me for this great investment? You called Michael.
Yeah, look, you should pick on him on this one. So,
I will. Trust me.
Ted is a fantastic person and very visionary if it comes to technology, sports betting. He understood that as one of the first, and he's a great ambassador for us. Sensational.
Well, it's interesting, too. If you think about it, just talk about Ted for a second. through AOL, he saw the collision of sports and technology and information and being able to aggregate that in real time. And I mean, when you guys first met, there must have been a lot of overlap in terms of even sort of the underlying philosophy of what you were trying to do.
Look, that was such a quick thing. So we talked and said, well, we understand the direction which this should take. And he understands or understood at this moment in time everything about the US. And I was a very starter. And even now, I would say I probably have 10% of his knowledge if it comes to the details in the US and what happens here in the sport and technology. So I'm good in the sports betting sector. I'm good in the sports technology sector. But Ted has an overall knowledge. And he has that for multiple sport. And he has a track record which is hard to beat. And that was easy. So if you meet somebody who is talking the same language, who has that expertise, who has the network and connection, that was a fairly simple thing to do.
All right, so let's do the lightning round. This is our favorite part of this. So we're going to go quick. We're going to go back and forth. I will start. So, give us the first thing that jumps to your mind. We may have already talked about this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's the best deal you've ever made, Carsten?
Created my own business.
What's the best piece of advice you've received on deal making or business?
Do small steps, prove them, and then accelerate and double and triple down.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Invest a fortune from people, not your own money, and don't have the right cadence.
What's your best advice for someone who's listening, wants to be an entrepreneur? What would you tell them, especially maybe in a moment where they're not sure that it's all going to go their way?
Every good entrepreneur I know, and I have a few friends, the older you get, the less you have, but they all have the same experience as an entrepreneur. You might run bankrupt once or twice. You're going to need to believe in yourself, but you need to find the point when something is not working. Don't put all the passion in. Be realistic on this. It happens to everybody that you struggle sometimes, and the skill is to detect it. I know it was not a quick answer, but it's an important point.
What's your hype song before you go into a big meeting?
Coldplay.
Oh, I like Chris Martin.
Yeah, well, I don't know him, but I love it, and probably A Sky Full of Stars.
Okay.
Love it.
All right. So Carsten Koerl, thank you so much. CEO and founder of Sportradar. You told us some good stories. Listen, anytime, Alex, we get a good Michael Jordan story and a good Ted Leonsis story, I feel like that's a successful episode right there. So Carsten, we're very grateful for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Deal is hosted by Alex Rodriguez and me, Jason Kelly. This episode was made by Stacey Wong, Anna Mazarakis, Lizzie Phillip, and Victor Iveas. Our theme music was made by Blake Maples. Our executive producers are Kelly LaFerriere, Ashley Honig, and Brendan Newnham. Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. Additional support from Rachel Scaramazzino and Elena Sausangelis. Thanks for listening to The Deal. If you have a minute, please subscribe, rate, and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. And remember, if you're a Bloomberg subscriber, you can listen to all of our episodes absolutely ad-free on Apple Podcasts. All you need to do is find the Bloomberg channel and connect your Bloomberg account. I'm Jason Kelly. See you next week.